Criminal Justice Commission is called to order. Call upon the recording secretary for call to order.
All right. Commissioner Vieira?
Present.
Johnson?
Present.
Greer?
Present.
Vice Chairman Christ?
Present.
Commissioner Brown?
Present.
Chairman Augusta?
Present.
Thank you. All is here.
Thank you. First on the agenda for today will be a presentation, the Hook of the Month presentation. I call upon Vice Chairman Christ for that, please.
Is Deputy Fetter here? Can we postpone this for a little while? He might be on a call and we'll do it.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That'd be great. We'll move along now to public business from the floor for agendized items. I'll call upon recording secretary, please.
We request any person who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on agendized matters to complete a speaker card. You will find speaker cards on the back table of the council chambers. Additionally, we respectfully request that you will fill out cards completely and print as clearly as possible so that if necessary, the commission or city staff will be able to contact you either by phone or by mail. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. When you approach the podium, please notice there are 3 lights. The green light comes on when you begin, the yellow light will come on when you have 30 seconds remaining, and the red light will come on when your 3 minutes are up. We ask that you be considerate of the allotted time to allow other speakers to have their 3 minutes as well. Following this procedure will allow for a smooth and timely process for the commission meeting, and we appreciate your cooperation. Thank you.
Okay, this time we'll move to the consent calendar. Consent calendar number 1, item number 1 is approval of minutes from the July 22nd, 2009 meeting. Entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of July 22nd, 2009.
I'll second that.
Do we need a vote? We need a vote.
I think I pushed that button there. Can we go through that again?
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll now move to new business items. New business item number 1 is a parole update, how the state budget cuts will affect parole. I call upon Captain Axel Anderson from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
This is really intended to not be the be-all, end-all in terms of the kind of challenges we're going to be faced with some of the problems that CDC is having, but this represents the latest information that we have from CDC management about what's going to happen here in the near future. And according to the Associate Director of the CDC, the state is going to reduce the operating budget of CDC by about 18%. That's huge. That's going to hit them hard. And this is going to cause, among other things, an early release of inmates and a substantial decrease in their ability to monitor them once they're on the outside. What I'd like to start with is just kind of throw out some interesting CDC statistics to show you the size of the system and some of the things they're dealing with. The current average number of inmates in CDC in our California prisons is 170,020, which is about 196% over capacity. That's part of what's causing the problems. The average number of inmates released each year is about 46,000. The average number of inmates returned each year is about 33,000. And the current number of parolees out in the state of California is about 125,097. The current number of PALs, or parolees at large is about 18,840, which is about 15% of all our parolees out there on the streets. The recidivism rate for the first year for your average CDC inmate is about 41%. 41% go back after the first year. In the second year, it's about 56%, and in the third year, it's about 60%. So obviously, we're not doing real well in getting them out in the streets and getting them reacclimated to society. In order to address all these budget decreases, CDC reps have indicated that within the next 1 year, 17,000, what they're describing as nonviolent offenders, are going to be released, and LA County is going to receive about 5,500 of those offenders. LA County sends about, CDC, their total population comes from LA County at a rate of about 30%. So when they release these inmates, probably somewhere in the area of 30% are going to be coming back here to LA County. A total release of about 40,000 inmates over the next 3 years is going to occur, with about 13,000 of those coming back here to LA County. Now currently, what CDC is telling us is that they don't really have the authority to tell these inmates where to go. They can help place them and work within the system, but they can't actually, they do not have 100% influence over where these people go. Their responsibility is simply to get them back to the original county of their origin. One of the other things that really concerns me is going to be the status of parole of a very large percentage of these inmates that are going to be turned loose. And it's called summary parole. And it has to do with the fact that they just do CDC and state parole simply, with their budget problems, does not have the capability to adequately monitor these parolees when they come out. So they're calling it summary parole. That's about the same as summary probation, which means nothing. Okay? There will be a search clause on each one of these people that are released, but the standard parole violations do not apply with these people. It's a summary parole. So the normal things that would have gotten them locked back up, such as dirty urine tests or associating with other gangsters or other parolees and other various what used to be parole violations that could get them re-locked up, no longer apply. Bottom line is, we're going to go out and search them and we're going to work with them, but unless we can put a fresh charge on them, a new charge on them, they're not going back to jail. It's just not going to happen. As far as our local situation around here in Lancaster, we've got about somewhere in the area of 1,500 parolees assigned to Lancaster. About 94 of those are parolees at large. We have no idea where they are. About 53 we've taken back into custody, and probably some of those are going to go back to state prison. And the interesting thing is 171 are set to be released from the system into the Lancaster area over the next month or so. And that doesn't even really have anything to do right now with the big budget problems. That's just the normal allotment that they determine are going to be released here in this area. Our current strategies right now that we're employing, with the normal police work that we're doing, really results in the rest of a whole lot of parolees. So we're not doing a real bad job dealing with parolees right now. We work them really, really hard. About 30% or somewhere in that area of arrests that our special teams make, such as the Berg team, Langcap, TOP, those special teams, are parolees. So they're intimately involved in just about everything that happens out here in terms of major crimes. And that really doesn't surprise me because they do. Our special teams focus on serious and habitual offenders, so it doesn't surprise me that they're taking so many parolees into custody. In addition to that, our crime analysts have access to CDC systems. They get lists of the parolees that are released here in this area. So we do have information on where they are. That is, if they stay where they're supposed to be staying. And we circulate that information around to all of our special teams and even our patrol guys so that they can go out and do what they can to check up on these guys and take them into custody on anything that they can find in terms of fresh charges. The problem with that is that with everything else going on, it's awfully hard to just take our special groups, our special teams of deputies, and send them out there primarily just to focus on chasing parolees around. We've got a lot of other fresh crimes going on out there committed by a whole variety of types of criminals that we've got to focus on that too. So we really haven't, I don't think, adequately focused on parolees over the last few years here. But with the number of parolees that we're going to be facing, we are in a position where we're going to have to develop some effective strategies, and I believe that this real influx of parolees that we're looking at right now represents a very, very serious threat to the progress that we've made with Part 1 crimes. So we're going to have to adjust our strategies. I've talked with Lieutenant Downton and other personnel over at the station, and what we believe we're going to need to do is we're going to need to vary the mission of the top team. We're going to need to create, I think, a team whose main mission is going to find out where these guys are, find out where these parolees are living, and we're going to get out and we're going to contact them, we're going to monitor them, and we're going to search them and their residences, and when we have the opportunity to, when we know they're reoffending, we're going to put them back into custody. We really do. I think it's going to be very, very critical that we in law enforcement here in Lancaster send a very, very clear message to these parolees. They need to know that we're going to be aggressively monitoring them, and we're going to be arresting them if they reoffend. As the picture becomes a little bit clearer, again, these are the best I can come up with for you in terms of the facts that we know about now. But as the picture becomes more clear, if things change, then certainly I'll keep you updated. Meanwhile, our plans are we're just going to be ready, and we're going to begin operations to get in contact with our local parolees starting as soon as possible and start working them, because we need to send that message to them. As far as I'm concerned, one of the important reasons that I need to stand here and report this to you is that I have a feeling that we would all benefit here in terms of law enforcement and dealing with parolees in this area if you begin to establish contact with state parole and begin to monitor what they're doing and maintain open lines of communication with them, mainly because state parole has a long history of using the Antelope Valley as a dumping ground for parolees. It's been obvious in years past that we have had more than our share compared to other areas in the county of parolees out here, and I think we need to make sure that we do what we need to do to ensure that we're going to have to take our fair share, but I don't think that we have to take some of the numbers that they've dumped on us in the past. So that might be an important thing for our commission to take a quick look at and monitor as much as possible. Okay, that's a sort of a quick accounting as to what we know now. I'm sure that it's a fluid situation and that there may be some other things happen as we go on into the future over the next few months. It's a fluid situation. We don't know exactly everything about what the state is going to do. They're still up there arguing over things. So that's what I can give you so far. And thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you again for all your service to our community and for just being proactive and seeing danger coming so that we can take action ahead of it. I wanted to ask maybe our city manager, Mr. Bozigian, is there an appropriate way for us to establish contact with the State Parole Board? Is that already, I'm sure, probably happening? Is there something, we should respond to as a commission, as was suggested by Captain Anderson?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Paris and I were talking, and the best way is to get state parole represented on the commission. So we're going to ask Captain Anderson and Lieutenant Doughton to get us a list of folks for your consideration, and we'll make a recommendation to the council. We do have other meetings that we've had with Senator Runner has been a champion in this. We've met with conference calls with literally the department head of CDC to no avail. But I think if we get local input here on that, then we'll have that day-to-day contact that we really need. That'll be best. We also, through Senator Runner's office, are going to reinstate our parole meetings, which is just sort of staffs getting together without blaming folks, just saying this is the problem, how do we fix it, and it's more of a working session. But the best advice I can give you is we need to get someone on this commission. You have an empty seat, that's the person you should have on.
It's an excellent idea.
And we'll try to have we will have recommendation for you by your next meeting.
I have a question. So I understand this correctly. City of Lancaster arrested 16,000 people last year. City of Palmdale, about 13,000.
Yes.
We have room in the courts for about 450 trials per year. So the majority of people plea bargain out. So the people that they're talking about releasing are good guys, bad guys? What's your opinion?
You really want my honest opinion? No, they're bad guys. What we found in law enforcement is that the current charge that somebody may have on them certainly doesn't address their whole history or their propensity for what they can do in the future. So I'm not sure that you can really get a real good handle just based on the current charge that somebody's being tried on, as to how much danger they represent to the community. And a good, for instance, is you might have a burglar go into a house and his intention is to go in there and steal the TVs and the VCRs and whatever they're going to steal. But what happens when they're confronted by a homeowner in the middle of the night? Tragic, violent things happen. So, burglars can be just as dangerous as gangsters running around in the street with a gun looking for another gangster from a rival gang. I do not believe that you can just release prisoners from prison who, quote, the charge that they're in prison on is, quote, nonviolent, and be assured that you're releasing a nonviolent person. Doesn't make sense.
And your summary parole probation, when, if I understand it correctly, the difference between a normal person on parole is if you violate that person, they go right back to prison.
Yeah, if that's what the parole officer determines. Yeah.
On a summary parole, these individuals don't go back to prison. If they violate parole, you have to have a brand new charge, and they go on top of that 30,000 people we're already arresting in the valley?
Yes. Yeah. It's going to be a tough situation. The reason I think the whole philosophy came about of parole violations as opposed to having to find a brand new charge to put on these guys was because you can pretty much see what direction their life is going, and whether or not they're getting ready to reoffend or are already in the process of reoffending, just by seeing, again, whether or not their urine tests are dirty, who they're hanging around with, what kind of activities they're involved in. And a lot of those aren't, necessarily violations of the law, but they're certainly a good indicator this guy is not a good risk to be back out in society. So would they violate him, put him back in prison? That's not going to happen for a very large percentage of these parolees coming out.
Thank you.
Captain, what is the criteria that CDC uses when they make a decision to put somebody on summary parole versus just a regular parole?
It's my understanding on what little information that I have right now, and I'm sure we need to talk with state parole a little bit more about that. But it has to do with the whole combination of things, possibly behavior since they've been incarcerated in state prison, and also their original charges. And so they try to make some kind of determination as to whether or not they're a good risk to release.
Is it your belief that those that are put on summary parole are at the least risk for reoffending?
That's I think the philosophy and intent of the system.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
I just have one. I guess I failed to write it down. The number of parolees in LA County currently, how many?
Let me go back over that.
I'd written down the population and then the amount of releases, 46 and 33,000 in the state. And I'm assuming, I remember it was around 15,000 annually in the county?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so there's about 15,000 released annually in Los Angeles County. And roughly annually, how many into the Antelope Valley area or Lancaster, if you have that specifically?
Yeah, it goes up and down to a certain extent, but according to the numbers we have over there at the station, about 1,500, and it can go up and down a little bit from that.
So I'm just guessing, trying to do the math off the top of my head, but it sounds like maybe of 33,000 that are released in the state, or returned, 33,000. LA County makes up roughly 30% of the state's population. Is that right?
I'm not sure about the state's population. I know that our share of inmates in CDC are about 1/3 of the population.
Yeah. It just sounds like we have a disproportionate number of parolees in this area.
We've been making that argument with state parole for several years now, and we haven't made much headway with them. They're starting to listen to us. We do meet with them on a regular basis, but to a certain extent, their excuse now is, hey, we're not responsible for that. We're only responsible for ensuring that they are transported back to the county they came from.
May I add something to that, Commissioner Greer? The last analysis we did when they gave us the numbers, we had the highest per capita population of any city in LA County, over 100,000 by far, the city of Lancaster. That was the impetus for an agreement that George and Sharon Runner were able to negotiate, which allowed us to cap the number of parolees to those that only had a historic connection to the community. Under the new administration of CDC, they told the senator, I was in the room, that they were no longer going to enforce that because they didn't think they could, and their position is now what the captain stated, which was, we can't control it.
Well, obviously, one of the concerns that you brought up today, if they're talking about a budget cut of the size they're talking about, and you're going to have these large number of parolees released on summary parole. We're having these problems right now. I can't imagine how that situation is going to go anywhere besides substantially downhill. I think one person we talked to with CDC said that, they were admitting it's like, letting a entire bunch of locusts go on society, descending upon us. It's going to be tough, which is why our plans are
we're simply not going to put up with it. We're going to use the resources we need because we're proud of how safe we've made this community over the last few years. That crime rate is coming down, and in no way, shape, or form are we going to allow all of that progress to just disappear behind parolees. We're going to work them very, very hard. We're going to put together a team that we believe is large enough and has the resources to get out there and do state parole's job for them. We're going to know where these guys are, and we're going to search them, and as appropriate, they're going back to jail.
Hey, Captain, just one more question about on that issue of parolees being, once they're sent out and where they're sent. Do you know, have an understanding of how that process actually works and who actually, does California Department of Corrections actually make the determination where a parolee is going to go in terms of not the county but the city and the county? Somebody has to make that decision. Do you know who that is in the organization?
Somebody has to make that decision, and I don't know. Don has had a little more experience with them. Maybe he can give you a more in-depth answer. But it's my understanding that family concerns and concerns having to do with distributing them evenly in various communities has something to do with it. So they have a formula. I'm not completely familiar with it. These are questions that we still need to talk to them about.
Well, when you say they, are you talking about the organization, or is there a committee, or is there a person or an entity? How is that? Somebody has to make that decision of where the parolee is going to go. I mean, the buck stops with somebody. Do you have any idea who that is?
It's my understanding that it's CDC and a division of CDC, which is state parole.
Okay.
State parole makes those decisions.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? No? Thank you very much. We go to our next item, which is continued new business. And continued new business, item number 1, discuss and determine a final recommendation on regulating the use of medical marijuana for the City Council to consider at a future City Council meeting. And at this time, we'll entertain comments from speakers. I have the cards. If you haven't filled out a card and you wish to speak, please do so. I will call them in the order that I have them. And I would ask, just remind each of you, because we have a number of cards, would you please hold your comments to 3 minutes, please? Thank you. First, call upon Mr. David Paul.
Mr. Chairman.
Terry, just 1 second, can you stop his time? Just so people can help me a little bit, I would like to hear about the crime portion, if possible, on your comments. If you could, I understand the medical side of it, and I think by our comments last time, most of the people on the board do understand the medical need for it. If I could urge the people to talk about the crime element and how it would reduce or increase, in your opinion, the crime, it would help me a lot, if possible.
Okay, let me try and stab at that. Because I was sitting here, and the first thing I want to say this morning is I respect all you gentlemen so much. It grieves me to have to stand up here and talk the way I do sometimes. I went home after the last time, and I drew up this chart of a self-actualized person, and a clearer, more efficient perception of reality is the hallmark of a self-actualized person. And I think that's the key to all of this. My boy over there, he's wearing the hat that I got at the night out, the National Night Out, and it's billed as a law enforcement and community endeavor. I put together this human accountability project 6 years ago. It's called the Local Government, Law Enforcement, and Citizens Collaboration. It deals with the real problems. Part of this has a traffic enforcement thing. I want electronic traffic enforcement because that's what puts a buffer between people and the police from the start. The cops are trying to get them in traffic and they evade them, and if we took that element out of there, you saw that thing on the news where the cops somewhere are trying to fix a ticket if you had electronic control, cops couldn't drive drunk and get off, and all these things. People would have mutual respect, and we would get that onus of antagonism between the law and society out of there. That's what I'm looking for. I want you all to understand that the problem is mood altering. We all need to mood alter. Okay, and some of it do it with righteousness and in proper ways, and some of us do it in wrong ways, but we're all looking to make ourselves better. And so I've watched for years these parole and prison meetings on TV, and a bunch of great people get together and they're going to put together a new board and they got a new plan, and I feel so sorry for these guys because they just have to do what they have to do. And so now, do you hear what we're saying? There's no money, we're going to cut it, and it's going to get worse. So, you know, that's what I always want to do, is fix the real problem. You all remember our Mayor Rex, before he was mayor, at the kickoff of the AV war on gangs. He made this joke about how when he loses a case, his family puts him on suicide watch. Now, I don't take rejection that strongly, but it does affect me. I asked to be on the Criminal Justice Commission, and I thought I was going to be on it. When I didn't get on it, my wife was trying to make me feel better. She was reading about all you gentlemen in the paper, and she said, "Honey, all these guys are somebodies." And I says, "You know, that makes me feel better." And she says, no. They're MDs, they're PhDs. I says, I got it. Okay, but, you know, I've had experiences. This is what I want to convey to you. I know where you're at. I walk on this side. I walk on the other. I can communicate. I can go out to people, and no one will put me to work. So if someone wants to read this, it's good. It's good. This is the problem. This is where we start to fix it, by getting some respect for the law and stop persecuting these people that are just using marijuana medically. That's what I'm here for. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, call upon Shannon Andrus.
Shannon, before you begin, I just wanted to, echo Commissioner Chris' comment. This is, I recognize that people have very strong feelings about this, and that there are certainly some important medical concerns. This particular commission is not the Medical Marijuana Commission. It's not the Lancaster Health Commission. It's the Criminal Justice Commission. And what we've tried to do very specifically is focus our recommendation on whether or not medical marijuana dispensaries will increase or decrease Part 1 crime in the city of Lancaster. So what would be helpful is if there is evidence that you have that medical marijuana dispensaries actually will decrease crime, because that's the issue we're going to deal with. The City Council, at their pleasure, can deal with the issue of whether or not medical marijuana dispensaries in the city of Lancaster are a health benefit, but this commission is going to deal with the issue of whether or not they are a crime benefit. So if there is some evidence in that regard, it would be helpful. And I do mean evidence. I'm sure people have opinions and conjectures about it. But if you have some evidence that people have a community where a medical marijuana dispensary was established and the crime level dropped, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
I'm not here to talk about the crime rate. I was here to talk about as somebody as a former drug abuser. And I just believe in my heart that marijuana could be used as a gateway drug, because my experience was that when I first tried marijuana, it was considered the safe experience because it was the lesser of all the evils of the drugs out there. And so when I started using marijuana, it didn't take away the pain I felt mentally and physically. It was just a high. So I just continued to use, coke, meth, hash. It just got really bad. There was crime involved, definitely. I did some things that I'm not proud of to get those drugs. I just believe that had I not tried marijuana to begin with, the door would not have been open for me to try the other drugs to numb the pain that I was feeling. I just think that having a dispensary here in the city of Lancaster could do us some serious injustice, because I have friends that do have the medical marijuana card, and then they turn around and sell their dope. I have family members that are struggling with that. So I just believe personally that the drugs that you take just numb you, but I don't believe drugs heal you. Thank you.
Next, I call upon Ann Greenhouse.
Good morning. Along with Shannon, I'm here to share with you just a little bit of my personal testimony as a former drug user and an alcoholic. Quite honestly, I don't believe it matters what reason a person might choose to begin to use marijuana. It could be because they want an escape, perhaps that medical reason, or maybe just this simple immaturity of wanting to fit into their peer group to be cool. Regardless of the reason, I believe it only leads to further use of drugs, more powerful and more seductive drugs. In my own experience, I found that my using of marijuana, it quickly became something that was monotonous and dull. Was I a criminal that never got caught? You bet. I just never got caught. I sat in a car, almost arrested once, but it never happened. But I was on that road, gentlemen. I needed and wanted more. I needed other substances to achieve the high and the escape that I desired. At first, I only tried marijuana just to fit in. I was one of those immature people. I wasn't going to allow myself to go any further. That's what I lied to myself. That's what I said. However, because of the pressures of our world that's in so many ways pound into our hearts and minds, more is better, more is better, more is better, I was a hook. It leads to a hunger for more. Because of the seemingly insignificant small choice I made many years ago, I eventually went through rehab not once but twice. I deal with the consequences of that lifestyle sometimes daily. By the grace of God, I stand here today before you, clean and sober for nearly 24 years. I earnestly urge you to consider carefully, Commissioners, this decision to legalize marijuana in any way, for whatever reason. There are life-threatening ramifications. It leads to destruction on all levels of life, including crime. Thank you for listening.
Next, I call upon Heather Horning.
Good morning. I'm an American citizen. I'm Heather Horning, American citizen by relocation and by choice, married to Bill Horning, an American citizen by birth. I have 6 children, 15 grandchildren, brought up in this area and constantly being affected by what is happening here. I'm a teacher, high school teacher in a local high school, teach junior English, senior English, advanced placement literature, advanced placement language. The families who entrust their students to us are worthwhile families, hardworking, dedicated, committed to their children. There are some people in my neighborhood who aren't so committed to their children. Their children have no supervision. If there were these dispensaries in our city, in our valley, there would be so many young people from 13 years old, particularly through 19 years old, who would have access to these marijuana distribution places. There might be fronts of a coffee shop or a massage parlor or something innocent sounding. It wouldn't alert, it wouldn't be a red light to parents and families, but their children would be victims of this. I have seen students who have actually moved from a closely supervised environment and have gone out and been affected by their peers in a way that is extremely destructive. And they have been drug addicts, moving from the so-called innocent narcotic of marijuana to something much worse, which has destroyed families and destroyed those individuals' lives. I have personal testimony of that, and I'm not going to be mentioning names. But it is true that it is happening, and we owe it to these young people as Americans, as American leaders, to be responsible, to protect them proactively before this happens. These dispensaries are destructive. There's nothing to be gained from them, except perhaps a financial advantage to the people dispensing the drugs. So I appeal to you from my heart, from my mind, as a thinking American, please vote unanimously against this destructive motion. Thank you so much.
Robert, forgive me if I mispronounce your last name, Knoob? Noob, thank you, sir.
I need to push the green button. I don't have to. Okay. My name is Bob Noob, and I live in Lancaster. I have for 33 years. I don't have statistics and statistics about marijuana, but I know that it's illegal, period. There's no such thing as a medical marijuana. There's not. Okay, you can go to the doctor and get a medicine for cancer and that kind of thing, but marijuana is illegal, period, any way you look at it. And let's just put it down on the streets in Lancaster. We have a prison here. This gentleman just talked about the parolees. Those people have moved up here now, so those parolees aren't going someplace else. They're going to stay here. A lot of them are here because of drug abuse in the first place. Where are they going to go? Those medical dispensaries are going to draw them like a magnet. Going to bring them right in. And what's going to happen all around these places is going to be all these people standing, selling this marijuana cheaper than what they can get at the dispensary. And how they get it from there, I don't know. What doctor grants that, I do not understand. There's no cancer, glaucoma, and HIV/AIDS is the only thing that it does any good for. Marijuana doesn't do anything else except put you on how to make you feel good, take care of your headache for now. 6 hours later, you need it again. And if you don't have the money, you're going to rob somebody, you're going to beat somebody, steal. What about the businesses around these dispensaries, gentlemen? Who's going to go there in their right mind and going to send my wife down to a place next to one of these places where all these guys are standing around outside smoking weed and standing there? Nobody. There is no way and no possible that you can think this is going to work. I don't know who's getting the money for it, but we're not getting any money for it. So why would we want to subject our city to that kind of thing? I just have, well, I'll stop right now. I have just one question. Is this a business any city official would knowingly endorse? And I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Bishop Hearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. Thank you for the privilege of being here, and I'll make mine as short as I possibly can. First of all, for over 18 years and prior to that, I've worked with the community, with ministers and everybody else to do everything we can to keep our community and our city clean, and as clean as possible. I don't have a lot of official data, Commissioner Chris, Vice Chair, on marijuana, but the best I can find out from what I've read and people I've talked to is that anywhere those dispensaries are makes trouble, and that's what we don't need. And so I would want to recommend that we don't do that. Number 3, I am a part of several ministerial groups here, but one of the groups I'm with is a faith-based organization that takes care of what we call a black infant health mortality rate. Well, I did a poll on them yesterday. Pastor Tom Pickens is here with me, and we absolutely, totally agree unanimously that this should not be allowed to have dispensaries here in our city. There's no way, as far as I am concerned, to control those. We set them up, and next thing you know, they're everywhere and they're doing whatever they want to do. So our recommendation is this, and strong recommendation to the Commission, that you have some type of ordinances drawn up, being that the state has already said marijuana is legal, that we would allow some type of collective, but with strong guidelines to make sure that that thing is done in a way that is going to somehow be controlled. So again, in summary, No, do not allow these dispensaries. It's a bad deal. It's a bad deal, and I can't say it any better than the young lady before me. I urge you strongly and prayerfully, and I do this in the name of the Lord Jesus. Don't do that. God bless you, and thank you for the time.
Jill Tanner.
Good morning. I am one in the fourth generation of my family to grow up in the Antelope Valley. Our family has lived in Lancaster for over 100 years. My own children will soon be the sixth generation, and I would like Lancaster to be a safe place for them to do so. It's one of the reasons my husband and I stayed here in the Antelope Valley. When I found out that Lancaster was considering permitting dispensaries, I researched the information. And while I have quite a bit of information, I'm going to tailor it down to two items. The myth is that marijuana is not harmful to others. The reality is that because it stays in the human body and impairs judgment for even 24 hours after smoking, I don't want to share the road or the sky with anyone whose judgment is impaired, even if it is at the end of the 24th hour. That's tremendous risk. The other myth is that neighbors of medical marijuana dispensaries experience a decline in crime. The reality is, in 2006, in the city of Los Angeles, the Narcotics Division of the LAPD did a study of Part 1 crimes and found that in 6 areas of Los Angeles, which several cities make up an area, robberies increased in the West Valley area by 200%. In one of those areas, burglary increased by 52.2%. And in the harbor area, there was an increase in aggravated assaults by 57.1%. I don't want my grown children to raise their children in a place that is getting a grip on gangs now, but must deal with dispensaries and the crimes associated with them. If we can reduce risks, it is responsible to provide severe parameters for law enforcement by preventing dispensaries in our city. There is significant evidence that crime will increase with dispensaries. Knowing that the Criminal Justice Commission is charged with reducing Part 1 crimes, it seems to me that this necessitates a ban on dispensaries in the city of Lancaster. Thank you.
Stephen, is it Ehlers? Ehlers?
Good morning, gentlemen. My
Morning.
name is Stephen Ehlers. I'm a retired deputy sheriff, also retired with the Marine Corps Reserve. My tenure in law enforcement, I worked Malibu back in the 70s. Marijuana was really a common thing. You open up a van and passing the hookah around, and the people are completely in lack of awareness. They're just kind of dead to the world. That was kind of the beginning. And in my own family, I had a brother that was 12 years my junior. He never made it to his 20th birthday. John didn't live close, but because of being the younger guy, he's the one that was just kind of let out on his own to survive. He started smoking pot, and he went on from marijuana with his friends to other drugs. They burglarized my folks. They burglarized neighbors. They abused my parents, and in 1973, I got a 1019, a return to the station at Malibu to be advised that my brother was found dead out on Point Loma from an overdose. I have seen it in my own family. I have seen it in other families, and pot smokers are just mellow people. Listen to some of these people that want to justify the sales of marijuana, medical marijuana. There's enough stuff floating around without selling it commercially. It's all over the place. If somebody wants to get it, they're going to get it. Why sell it commercially? Why make it easy for people to get something that's going to harm them? And as they say, the gateway drug, it opens up the door to other things, be it barbiturates or whatever's on the market today. It's all out there. Heroin's coming back. And I'm sorry, I just bought the phone and I couldn't figure out how to kill it, but at least it's pleasant music, so. I tried to get the Marine Corps hymn on it. But dealing with Verizon is something else. But in my life's been impacted. My parents have been impacted by that thing with marijuana. Kids took my parents' credit card at age 16, flew to the Caribbean, was busted for possession of pot 2 hours after he got there. I mean, kids can make the connection. So I am very much against it, selling it commercially or for medical purposes or any other purposes. There's stuff all over the place. We all see it. So don't open up another door. I live in Antelope Acres out in Lancaster, but I'm in the sphere of influence. So thank you.
Wayne Hunt.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm a relatively new resident of Lancaster. Came here in February, spent about 6 months here last year. I'm a retired police officer and chief of police in a little dinky town in Vermont, which is not part of Canada. It's actually part of New England, and had an opportunity to work for a couple of years on a DEA task force working on drugs, organized crime, and other areas of enforcement. I come here today to give you my opinion, which is only my opinion, and possibly give you a little bit of statistics in addition to what Ms. Tanner spoke about with regard to LAPD. The city of Whittier, California, and also San Bernardino County have done exhaustive studies which indicate that in areas where dispensaries have been located, that Part 1 crimes have increased, particularly the Part 1 crimes that deal with crimes against persons, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, that type of crime. As you know, in 2009, our United States Attorney General Eric Holder indicated to DEA and the Department of Justice that the President no longer wished them to enforce narcotics violations involving medical marijuana, and basically, in a swift second, decriminalized it. If you do not know, there is a bill that's been introduced into the U.S. House on June 11th by Barney Frank from Massachusetts, which would basically decriminalize the use of medical marijuana, and it may make moot your issue, particularly as it applies to states. It basically states that if a state says it's okay, and there will be no further federal involvement, period. That'll be the law. They'll basically be removing marijuana as a Schedule I drug from the DEA Controlled Substance Act, and it'll be free to be used in any way it can. When that statement was made, Senator Boxer here in California made a statement, and I'd like to quote it. She said, "That's really good news for people in California who are so ill that they've gotten a doctor's note in compliance with the law." She went on to say, if you have a doctor's note, you should be able to get whatever medicine you need. Well, I can support much of what she's saying, with the exception of a reference to a doctor's note. It really should be a prescription. If there really is a medical need for marijuana, which I personally do not believe there is, but that's just my opinion, then why not use the highly functioning system we already have in place, where you go to a doctor, you get prescribed a medicine, and you go to a pharmacy and get it filled. I mean, Lancaster could get on the map here and actually say something instead of just going along with the flow and saying, yeah, everybody else has got marijuana dispensaries, let's do the same thing. Let's say no to it. Let's say we got a system. If I need morphine, I go to my doctor, tell him my hip's going to be replaced for the 4th time, which it is. I need some morphine, some OxyContin. He gives me a script. I go to the pharmacy, and I get my drugs. I have copies of the bill and also my remarks if anyone does. Thank you.
Melanie Coker.
Hi, everyone. See if I don't get nervous again. Here we are another 2 months later in the same situation. I have to say to all of you here, I agree with your thumbs down to dispensaries because that is what we are not. I'm here to establish the facts. First, I and the patient members in our collective have been acquiring our medical marijuana here in the Antelope Valley for the past almost 3 years. We are a private collective, and only lawfully qualified patients and members are associated with our collective. We do not have any young people in our association. Our collective is totally focused on medicinal needs of patients who have pain and suffering or are terminally ill. Our collective is about quality of life. I have been requesting a permit for over a year, and we are allowed by law to have a location for safe access to fulfill our medicinal needs. I have acquired my seller's permit, which is not my ideal to do so, because it has to be taxed. So however you look at this medicinal marijuana, it has to be taxed. I also went out of my way to educate City Hall, putting together notebooks of valuable information concerning medical marijuana, regulations, laws, and other city ordinances. We just want a facility for association that is safe. We are tired of looking over our shoulder when we are just trying to feel better. Again, we will not be denied our quality of life. Our nonprofit collective mission is to promote the welfare of patient members by providing a medium to create a safe, consistent, and reliable source of quality medical marijuana at the lowest possible recovery amount. This is accomplished collectively acting together towards the production, cultivation, acquisition, storage, and distribution of medical marijuana, entering into agreements with similar or like organizations for the benefit of the collective patient members. Because there are those patient members who can grow medical marijuana and those who cannot. The collective obtains the medicine from the grower patient member and distributes to patient members. Then to help recover out-of-pocket expenses, a reasonable compensation is allowed to cover these services. Our collective is for patients and by patients. And if I could address the crime issue real quick here. No, we are taking crime away from the streets by having it in one location for our patients to be safe. Even the dealers out there in the streets don't even deal marijuana anymore because it's a waste of their time. They can't get it. They don't have the quality or the quantity that we have. So they don't mess around with marijuana anymore. They're messing around with the meth and all this other stuff, and that's what you should be dealing with. They don't care about the medical marijuana. That has nothing to them. And what else? I don't know. I guess that's it.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
How many people belong to your collective?
In the Antelope Valley, approximately 200. And when she gets up to speak, she could speak on that part.
And how do they belong?
We have a membership agreement. What do you mean, how do they belong, in what respect?
How do they find you?
How do they find me? We have ways. First of all, when you're in this medicinal world of medical marijuana, when you're in need of your medication, you have access, and through safe access. And that's obviously, if I've been here almost 3 years, I haven't disrupted this community whatsoever. I have been very discreet. I've never been stopped by the sheriffs. I've never given medication to any young people. Everyone in our collective is their birth. I have it on there. We have a petition signed by all the patients with their birthdays. We're talking 63, 1949, 54, 37, 29. We're talking about a senior citizen collective here that we have.
When an individual comes to your collective to obtain...
They can't come to our collective because you won't let us have one. So what we do is we drive. We drive and we drive and we drive. Because we can't have a collective if I operate out of my home or one of the patients' home, that's going to disrupt the neighborhood. Too many patients coming by 2 or 3 times, and not 2 or 3 times for each patient. I mean, a patient come by to pick up their medication from our facility. It's not good to do that in your neighborhood. If you have a commercial building somewhere where it doesn't have to have a big name on it that says medical marijuana right this way. It doesn't have to have any name on it whatsoever. It just has to be a location where they come in with a proper ID card. We have a security guard, and no one's allowed in a collective but the members of our collective. We are not open to the public.
Thank you.
And that's the difference.
Thomas Pickens.
Good morning, gentlemen. I am here today to speak in opposition against medical marijuana. I agree with probably 100% of everything that the previous speakers have mentioned, so most of what I'm going to say is going to be reiteration. Commissioner Brown, you mentioned about some facts and evidence, and which I really don't have, but I can tell you that, in my opinion, I do not believe that the presence of marijuana will decrease crime. I believe that anything that we include in our community should be an effort to decrease and not to increase crime. I grew up in the city of Los Angeles. I was actually not a part of, but I lived where the 1965 riot broke out at on 115th and Avalon. I was a part of the 92 riot, in that I lived in the area. I came up here in 1992, and I can tell you, growing up in the city of Los Angeles, that you do not want to make marijuana easily accessible to people. I do not believe that everybody that uses marijuana will commit a crime. I don't believe that. I believe that there are individuals that have a propensity towards committing crime, and if you make marijuana easily accessible to them or available to them, I believe that that it can be a negative and have a negative effect on them. So I don't believe, I am a pastor in the area, as I said, and I have over 15 members in our church. We have our young adults, we have our youth. We've done everything that we can do along with the city here to make this city an acceptable place to live in. I was really excited when I first moved up here in 1992. One of the things that I heard is that there was a adult video shop that, and I discovered that the city, or I believe Pastor Hearns had something to do with that, did not want that in our city because it would be a negative effect in our environment. I believe that the making medical marijuana easily available for people will have the same effect. Again, as a pastor, I have sympathy, and I have to be concerned, of course, with individuals that need help, and I understand that people need help, but I believe that, as the one gentleman said, that there is a legal way to obtain the help and the medicine that you need. So I'm in strong opposition against legalizing marijuana in our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, January, and forgive me for not being able to read your last. Oh, hello. Thank you.
I'm here today, of course, to address this issue. I'm a qualified patient and a member of Holistically Yours, and we would like to express our concerns that we are in desperate need of a location where we have safe access to receive our medication. Safe access goes both ways. Safe access goes not only to the person that needs to have their medication, but the person that is delivering their medication, that they know that the person that they are going to is safe. Melanie Coker, who you met, has been here for us. She's been compassionate, has gone beyond the call of duty. Try to drive in 100-degree weather. It's not fun. She's had 2 businesses in Lancaster. She's been a resident for over 20 years. She's had performed home and drywall office cleaning. Performed home and office cleaning for 14 years. Preferred drywall for 9 years. She has the management skills that can be used to properly have a collective, not a dispensary, a collective where people can come and collectively come together and not be judged about what we need to take. Total consideration for her application for the business should be considered. I would like to address some things. As she said, I'm looking at signatures that I received. I would not mention people's names, but you're more than welcome to have these. Birth date 49, 57, 51, 62, 44, 47. I could go on. I'm an adult member of this community. I lived on base at 86. I moved out into Lancaster in 92. I have an 18-and-a-half-year-old son who, because of a family member back in 1996, when the Compassionate Care Act was passed, we as adults have a right to choose what we put into our body. My son at 18 years and a half has never touched medicinal marijuana or any other drug. He understands that aspirin is for this, Tylenol is for this, medicinal marijuana is for this, and these are not for these. These issues are not for him. My son is successful. My son is a straight A student. My son graduated at 17 and a half. I kept control of my family and my son and my issues. It sickens me that month after month that people come up here and have to divulge their personal anguishes, beliefs, or whatever when it is legal and I am a citizen of the United States and I vote. The only other options that I have is next to maybe join city council myself and stand up and say, no, I don't want my 15-year-old, anyone's 15-year-old child. I would take a bullet for anybody's child. I would stand up and say and counsel that child. Doctors cannot give a recommendation. Excuse me, one more thing. Your PPO cannot give your recommendation. It's not allowed. The government hasn't gone that far. We've gone as far, Melanie has gone as far to want to keep us safe. We don't want the kids to get involved in this.
Your time's up. Thank you.
I apologize.
Thank you.
Understand. Thank you for your time. And if anybody would like this, have a copy of this.
Can you give it to the...
I'll make it known that once you submit that is public record. So if those names on there you want to...
No, I don't want it public record. Okay. I can't decide that. What are you going to do with it? I mean...
Once it becomes part of the record, it will become all public record for everybody to see.
I don't have their permission. I didn't know that. I don't have their permission to make a record. I do know that if I don't go to her and I go on the street and get something, there's the issue that our sergeant and our deputies have to deal with later. And it's a scary thought. Very scary thought not to have safe access. I want to thank you for your time.
Tarlise Netherly, is that correct?
Good morning. I'm here from All-American Healing Group in Inglewood. We are the ones that are a block and a half from City Hall and Inglewood Police Department. We're not, the way our collective is set up, our members do have IDs. When they come to our co-op, they show their ID and they're allowed to purchase. The Inglewood Police Department comes through on a regular basis to make sure that everything is going the way it should. When we first started there were shootings and robberies on Market Street, and that's where we are. Since we've been there, the crime has declined, and I won't say it's because of us, but the police department know who our members are at any given time. They can just stop them and ask them, are you with this collective? They'll show their ID card and go on their way. That would probably help with your crime issue. We are in a position where you really wouldn't know we were there. So if we were to come out here, it would be in a location where it's easy access, but you wouldn't know the collective was there. Only the members would know. We grow for our members. It's a nonprofit organization, so once we grow, they are allowed to bring their plant in, and we give that medicine to other patients, and that's the way our co-op is. The crime issue out here, you guys have done massive improvements. I would think because we are collectives and we want you to know who we are, that would help you better as far as knowing who the real patients are and who aren't. And that's what you're looking for, to figure out if this is a real patient or if this is someone who's doing something illegal. Well, that way, if they have an ID card, you'll know, one, what collective they are in and how to distinguish them from the public. And that's what I wanted to say. So.
If someone had a medical marijuana card from the city of Lancaster, could they go to your facility and purchase?
Only if they have that card.
So you're open to the public?
It depends. when you first start there, you have to, we're easy accessible to the public. So if you have your recommendation, you can become a member of our collective. So if you're with another collective and you're here in LA and don't want to drive down to the Valley, you need 2 forms of ID, your recommendation, and if that collective has an ID card. And if they don't have an ID card, we call that collective to make sure that you are actually a member there.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you.
I have one quick question, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what is the criteria for becoming a member of your collective?
You need a formal recommendation from a doctor that prescribes medical marijuana.
And how do you verify that?
We call the doctor to make sure that they are a member of that doctor. It would be like any insurance company. If you would they would need to know to verify, they would call. And we also get faxed information from that doctor. We actually give a file, start a file for each patient, so that when we verify, everything is put into that file, along with both picture IDs, their California IDs, to make sure that they're of age, and a picture of the ID, formal ID card with our formal logo on it. That way, it's in that file.
And
so if law enforcement were to come and ask about this certain patient, we could pull that file to make sure.
Do you share your file of collective members with Inglewood PD?
Only if they ask.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have one question. You said that the collective that you operate now in Inglewood, that you wouldn't know that it was there.
No.
Tell me what it looks like from the front. There's nothing that describes it or identifies it as collective. It looks just like a commercial building or residential
It's
home.
actually a commercial building. I'm just going to let you know. The bottom of the building actually has shops. And in order to get into our collective, you have to have the phone number. And the phone number, once you get in our area, we'll call you. You call the phone number. We'll buzz you up. You go up a flight of stairs, and it's on top of regular stores. You wouldn't know it was there.
Okay, so you have commercial retail type operations on the bottom. What kind of businesses do you have along
There's
there?
a clothing store, a barber shop, a beauty shop, a beauty supply, a ticket place where you buy tickets for events. There is, on the end of the building, I think it's called WIC, where they go and get that for the kids. It's on our main Market Street.
Okay, no signage whatsoever?
None.
Do you advertise?
It's in our gym book, yes.
In what?
A gym book that gives you all the collectives in California.
Anywhere else?
That's the only way.
How many members? I'm sorry, I missed. You said how many members?
Oh, wow. There's only 2 co-ops in Inglewood, and we service, I would say, almost 500.
500 people?
Yeah.
And where do you acquire your marijuana?
I can't give you that information.
Do you grow it yourself?
Some people grow it, yes. They grow it. They'll bring in their plant because it's still fresh. We give it to another grower who processes it, and you basically take the leaves off and let it dry. And the patient, that's how they pay for their medicine that's already dried out. They'll give us a fresh plant, and we'll give them dried marijuana for them to take home.
Do you acquire it legally?
Yes, we do.
Can you explain how you acquire it legally?
I'm not on that end of it, so I wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Well, do you know if you acquire it legally? It sounds like you don't know.
No, I do know that we acquire it illegally, but I don't know the growers. I don't know how that end of the process of when they get it.
Do you know if it's being grown legally?
Yes, it is being grown legally. It's being grown by our patients. Every patient has a recommendation, and their recommendation tells them how much they can grow themselves. It's in the state.
So just so I'm clear, the only marijuana you acquire is from people who grow it as part of
our co-op.
Of your co-op?
Yes. It doesn't go any further. If you're a member of our co-op, we grow for our co-op. It doesn't go outside of that. That's why we give them membership cards.
Thank you.
Except if you come from another collective
If you come from another collective and you want to be a member of our collective, you have to fill out the paperwork, and we verify that you are with another collective. You can be with more than one collective, because a lot of people, I'm down in Inglewood, I would love to have a collective up here. It's very far to drive.
Explain to me the reasoning behind belonging to more than one collective.
Convenience.
Why would I want to be involved in Lancaster and Inglewood?
I wouldn't if it was in Lancaster.
And how many people are in Inglewood? The population?
Oh, I don't know.
Can you guess?
I would say about 15,000 people. It's a very wide area.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
Victoria Zavala.
Good morning, Commissioner and everybody else. I really feel for the people that did stand up here, the few that were against a dispensary. We're kind of spinning our wheels here. I'm just going to kind of get to the point. We're not asking for a dispensary. It doesn't need a big open sign and lights and the marijuana pot and all that stuff. I'm a patient. I run a collective. We have our true paperwork, nonprofit organization under a mutual benefit corporation. All the patients have a mutual benefit. I used to be a paramedic. What I do right now feels like I'm a paramedic all over again. Here I am, 36, suffering with lupus. I have a 3-year-old. I go to church. I believe in God. I believe in the education system. I'm an educated voter too. But we need safe access. We need a location. They asked about our city officials and our government. It's been here. It's been here this whole time. Why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? Sorry, I'm not feeling that good today, so I'm a little jittery because of my lupus and stuff. What I'm basically saying is that last night when I left city council, you know what I had to do? I still had to deliver to patients who are sick. Do you know what it's like to have Lou Gehrig's disease? To see that patient suffer? I vaporize. The medicine isn't that bad. I feel for what happened in 73. Okay? I was born in 73. Those things are still happening. When I was a paramedic, it was still my duty to act, no matter what. I can't pass judgment for a patient that walks in the door that's getting over methadone or that's getting over any other pills or that's on heroin. We walk into situations. It's an uncontrolled environment. You don't know what you're walking into. A patient could be on Section 8. Yes, we have access to our medicine. Is our medicine legal? Yes, it is. I'm very specific on what medicine we pick for our collective for our 350-plus patients. I've only been doing this for a year. Not even a year. Not even a year. How do we get the patients? We don't advertise. You don't need to. You don't need to advertise marijuana. That's not what we're here about. We're here about safe access. We're spinning our wheels about this word dispensary. Look up the word dispensary. We're still going to have a dispensing room in the wellness center, in the collective. The patient comes in, CPA, for example, okay, beautiful shop, beautiful suite in Melrose, on Melrose. It's a shame that there's 10 other shops. This guy was there first. He's part of GLACA. GLACA is Greater Los Angeles. It's a caregiver alliance. That's what we need here in Antelope Valley. People like me and Mel, that we could get this organization go. We need movement. We need awareness. We need education. Why are the parks and people taking my money to put a medical marijuana booth? That's advocating, that's educating, that's bringing awareness. This isn't bad. About our kids and about crime, that will be controlled with safe access. Give us a chance. We're not Inglewood. We're not any other city. We're Lancaster. Let's separate ourselves from the rest. When I look at Mayor Paris every time when I come, I look at him with leadership because he said, show by example, show the leadership. I get nervous when I come up here. It's hard. 36-year-old, I used to go to the library, take my daughter, preschool time. Those people don't talk to me no more. That's not fair because I'm a patient, and I refuse to put synthetic medicine, man-made medicine.
Your time's up, ma'am. Thank you.
If you have any questions or concerns, I could tell you everything how Collective is properly operated through a nonprofit organization. We need safe access.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, and I'm sorry I can't read your last name. Ownby. Thank you, sir.
My name's Scott. I've been in Lancaster since 49. Back in 64, I was driving through Bouquet Canyon, and in one of the little sports cars I had in Austin, I passed this guy, and he passed me, and we kind of ended up racing each other through the bouquet, which I did way too much. And he stopped and he says, "Hey, let's go have some coffee at the Denny's in Sierra Highway." I said, "Okay." So my friend and I, other guy had a Corvette. He was just riding in my little car. We went down and had coffee with this guy, and he had 5 girls with him, I think. He says, "Hey, why don't you guys just come live with us? We live up the canyon up here in Bouquet." And he was just I guess like maybe 1960, but just a happy-go-lucky guy. But I didn't, and I didn't want to. I was married, but just we're not racing through the canyons for something to do. But Charlie Manson's still in jail, and praise the Lord that God has saved me from marijuana and everything that resulted from it.
Ron, your last name, sir, is that? Thank you. Tisbert? Thank you, sir.
I put on my card that I was neutral on this, but I'm listening. You want to know about crime and so on. Yeah, the officers up here telling you, yeah, there's more crime and so on. But, you got to realize there's special interest groups. It's like when government agencies come around for their budgets every year, they have a practice, which the police use, called padding. You ask for more than you need. And, these people that are getting mugged on the streets and ripped off on the streets trying to buy this medical marijuana, they don't report it to the police. Or if they do, they're laughed at. So, you're not hearing the other side of people that get ripped off and so on. This has been, this medical marijuana came in, 96? They've had medical marijuana. And I've recently, realized that these people up here don't have a dispensary or they're going down below, and you're hearing these stories. And a lot of these folks here, the anti-cannabis people came in, they go on the internet and they get this information. But you got to check where the information's coming from. It's usually special interest groups. You got the pharmaceutical out there, you got the oil companies out there fighting hemp because of its rich contents of cellulose, which can, an acre of hemp I've read it makes either 1,000 gallons of ethanol or 500 gallons of gasoline. So, you've got all these special interests. It's like Hearst, Randolph Hearst, when he used that rag, the Herald Examiner, during the 30s for marijuana prohibition. Alcohol prohibition went out. You saw crime decrease there. Alcohol prohibition came in. You saw crime rise. It's been the same thing with the cartels and the marijuana thing. You got some politician up north wants to put a $50 tax on an ounce. It's not going to do nothing to end the black market. When these dispensaries and all of this cloud goes away about marijuana being the boogeyman, which is a non-narcotic substance, you're going to see the prices decrease. You're going to see all the black markets dry up. Prohibition never got nothing except killings and gangsters and trouble. So I don't understand why you people fight these people on these dispensaries. And if it's been in effect since 1996, somebody's been dragging their feet. They don't seem like a bunch of bad people, these dispensary people. And the other folks that come out, these you got one lady said she smoked pot and figured, she was going to go to hell in a handbasket. Well, the truth is, in society, we have a certain number of people that have addictive personalities, and it's always going to be there. It don't matter if it's pot, or if they took a beer, or if they ate at Colonel Sanders. Look at obesity. You're telling me that's not some kind of an addiction? I mean, that's about all I got to say. Oh, time's up. I could have said a lot more, but all right, thank you, guys.
Patricia Rodriguez.
I push the green button. I don't do anything? Okay. Good morning. My name is Patricia Rodriguez, and I have a master's degree in psychology, and I work with abused children and their families doing therapy. I've been doing that about 5 years now in Lancaster. Also serve clients in Palmdale. I've heard a few things this morning that appear to be misrepresentations, and that is that marijuana is a drug. It's not a drug. It's a plant. It's an herb. I also heard that, I get nervous up here, that we should take OxyContin instead of smoking marijuana. And OxyContin is like a really, really addictive, it's like heroin. I think they call it hillbilly heroin, to be precise. But, if I had a choice of smoking or taking OxyContin, I would smoke. I do not do that at this time. It's not necessary for me. I do have a chronic health condition that deteriorates on a daily basis, and I would like to have that medicine available for when I get to the point where I'm going to need it. And I will get to that point eventually. It may be a few years or 1 year, I don't know. So I'd like for that to be available. I have a daughter. She's turning 27 next week. And she went to UC Santa Barbara, and she did a double major in law and society and communications. Ended up with a 3.92 GPA. She smoked marijuana every day for her illness, which she does have a chronic illness. Presently, 2 weeks ago, she took the bar exam. She went to Santa Clara University School of Law, got her law degree, just took the bar. And she smokes marijuana on a regular basis. In fact, she was the Normal National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws Campus Organizer of the Year in 2005 for the United States. So she's very active in the movement. I don't want to have to go to the guy on the corner to buy my medicine, should that happen. And one of the first ladies who spoke said she's 24 years sober and clean. So am I. I've been sober and clean since 4/3/85. Never relapsed. For me, it was more of an existential angst type of situation that I was in, where I needed to use drugs and alcohol. And I'm very, very grateful that I'm sober, and I just hope you give us an opportunity to take our medicine. Thank you.
I have one question. It's come up a couple times. I just want to get a clarification and help me understand this. You said that marijuana is not a drug. It's a plant.
No, it's a plant.
And
it's an herb. It's a plant. It is not a drug. We could bring you literature if you'd like.
Well, it's classified by DEA as a Schedule I drug, so I'm
But
just,
there's no prescription given for it. You get a recommendation. You do not get a prescription. To get a prescription, something has to be a drug. Marijuana is not a drug. You get a recommendation from the physician.
So just so I understand, is cocaine a drug?
Yes.
Is opium a drug?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not a plant derivative?
It's a different chemical makeup.
Well, I understand that. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think you answered my question. And that concludes all of our speakers.
We need to close the public hearing.
Pardon?
We need to close the public hearing on this. Close the public hearing.
All right, there are no more speakers, so that concludes all of our comments from the floor. Our new business item is to discuss and determine a final recommendation to the City Council. So are we prepared to have a discussion and make a recommendation?
I think we are.
Let's start with, let's have a discussion about that. Let's have, there were some issues where we left off last, really raised, I guess I'll start. There were a couple of issues that we kind of addressed last time, and one of them had to do with, it really was kind of a two-part discussion. One of them had to do with the dispensaries, and the other had to do with collectives. And so I'd like to have a discussion on each of those, and maybe the recommendation needs to be broken into two recommendations, because there are really two issues.
I would agree with you. I think, I think part of the issue, even as I listened to the testimony today, is making a distinction between a dispensary and a collective, which, according to Prop 215, which legalized medical marijuana, and then Senate Bill 420, which was passed in January of 2004, that allowed cities and counties to adopt and enforce rules, regarding, sort of regulating these collectives. I think there is a distinction between having a storefront, a dispensary, and having a collective. And whatever our stance is personally on the issue of marijuana and its necessity, I think is not really what's been the issue here for us to discuss. I think the issue has been clarity for the Sheriff's Department. That was the first thing that I heard Captain Anderson mention several months ago now. And I think what needs to happen is I think there needs to, my personal opinion is I think we should take a stand against having a dispensary in Lancaster. I think our city needs to have some sort of an ordinance that would speak to that. That would be my recommendation to the City Council. It's not the job of this commission to draft an ordinance. It's the City Council's job. And secondly, to come up with some really clear guidelines as to what is allowed, which I think our city's allowed to do under our Senate Bill 420 and in conjunction with Prop 215 to regulate collectives in a way that our Sheriff's Department knows what they're to enforce and what they're not to enforce. I think as I listened to some of the testimony today concerning collectives, that actually caused me concern that maybe there's not as much regulation in other cities as I think there needs to be. I think it should be very easy to answer the question, where is the marijuana coming from? I think that question has to be clearly answered. Where is this being grown? Where is it coming from? And who has access to it? I am concerned that there's somehow open access from other communities. The initial argument was we're isolated from LA, and so we need to have easier access to this. And so I'm concerned that other people from other cities could come in. I don't think we want to draw people into the Antelope Valley because we offer marijuana. The other thing that I'm concerned about as I listen to that is when you read through Senate Bill 420, the idea of a collective is that these were a smaller group of people that were getting together to grow a limited quantity of marijuana so that they could have access to it, that it would be traded just amongst those people who are growing it. While I'm not sure we're prepared today to draft this ordinance, I think those are considerations that should be kept in mind with an ordinance that would somehow help us to regulate in a enforceable way collectives, which are legal, but we also have the authority as a city to regulate those. And I think that we should, and from the testimony I heard today, I'm concerned that maybe that's not happening as well as it should in some other cities.
Any other comments?
Yes. But there were some very nice comments that people made today. I do think this very nice woman that came in and said we're sort of spinning our wheels pointed to an important issue, that there is a difference between collectives and cooperatives and the dispensaries. Dispensaries have come to be those places that are open to the public, have the potential for profit. And I've done a lot of reading about this and looking into it, and it seems pretty clear to me, and I would, again, I invite people to supply us with information otherwise, that dispensaries do not help reduce Part 1 crime in the community. In fact, there's pretty good evidence that the opposite happens when a dispensary appears in a community. Crime, Part 1 crime, seems to increase. This has been found in, I know that in Denmark and in England and in Canada, they are moving in the opposite direction of their earlier directions to make these dispensary sort of situations less accessible because they've had more and more crime problems. However, I think it's quite clear that cooperatives, as defined by Senate Bill 420 and clarified by the Attorney General's opinion, are legal in the state of California. And I think this very nice woman who came and talked to us about their cooperative and how it works and is a very strong testimony to the fact that we don't really need a dispensary because people seem to be functioning quite effectively within the framework of a cooperative where they get together, The law currently says that they can possess 8 ounces or 6 mature plants, 12 immature plants, and people can enter into a collective together to share marijuana and to make sure that they are having access to medical marijuana. So that seems to be actually working pretty well for you guys, and it seems to me in that sense it's a testimony that people are quite capable of getting together within the guidelines of the law and finding access to medical marijuana without the need of a dispensary. The Attorney General currently, of course, is the former Governor Jerry Brown, and for those of us old enough to remember when he was governor, the opposition liked to refer to him as Governor Moonbeam. And he has never been one who would be a harsh critic of the personal use of marijuana, would be my guess. And the Attorney General's opinion, and their job is to try and take the Senate Bill 420 and interpret it so that people can have some idea what's going on. And the guidelines that the Attorney General's opinion delineates is very specific about how a cooperative would work and how a nonprofit, that it would be behavior between members only, non-members cannot participate, and that it's a democratically organized organization. So it would be my opinion, and I listen to Bishop Hearns. I see Bishop Hearns frequently in the emergency room. He's a guy of terrific compassion. He comes in to see people in his parish whose families have been involved in medical heartbreaking situations, and he arrives totally on his own to try and provide comfort to people. He's a guy with a great amount of compassion, and I think I totally agree with his opinion. Number one, the dispensaries that is open to the public and with the potential for profit should not be would not be a good idea in the city of Lancaster. And that secondly, in terms of the cooperatives, it probably falls to the city council, and specifically maybe Mr. Caudell can address this, the Land Use and Planning Commission to draft what the city would like to do in terms of how these cooperatives can be set up. It's clear that the cooperatives appear to be legal in the state of California, and so the job of the city is probably just to provide the structure and framework of how those cooperatives would operate. Thanks.
Dr. Brown and I have gone back and forth trying to make a recommendation. We've both got different recommendations as far as it, but the recommendation that I would have is the Criminal Justice Commission role is a very specific one. To lower the crime rate in the city of Lancaster. After considerable investigation and research and hearing testimony from numerous citizens, the Criminal Justice Commission has found it does appear that the introduction of medical marijuana dispensaries often increases the level of crime. Hence, the Criminal Justice Commission, in its advisory role to the Lancaster City Council, would recommend the following. Number one, ban medical marijuana dispensaries in the city of Lancaster. Two, while self-contained medical marijuana cooperatives are clearly allowed under state law, the Criminal Justice Commission would recommend to the Lancaster City Council that it be regulated with very specific guidelines that reduces the opportunity for abuse and criminal behavior. Those would include, but not limit to, the following: fingerprinting, a photo ID, preferably an industrial site, a ban on residential, near schools, parks, that kind of stuff, registration with local law enforcement, some type of security, a licensing fee that incorporates extra enforcement costs, and the access be limited to local residences only. That's what I came up with, and I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Comment?
we may mention it sounds like there's two recommendations, just to clarify. One was specifically with regards to the dispensaries. And the other one now, it sounds like comes to us today, is along the lines of the cooperatives, the collectives. Clearly, it's allowable under state law to have co-ops and collectives do that, but it doesn't really address the issue of the contradiction between the federal and the state under the Controlled Substance Act. I guess the question is, how do we look at this? You know, we talked about when we look at this from a criminal justice system perspective, you know, does it reduce crime? I think in dispensaries, we've kind of come to the conclusion that yes, it does. When we talk about the collectives or the co-ops, I see it as another issue right there. Again, if I take a look at it from the standpoint of what the charge is to reduce crime, and I'm upholding a criminal justice commission, but yet I'm going against a type of law, whether it be federal, state, or local ordinance, I personally struggle with that to a degree. Though I support the other, I guess, you know, I want to question, is this in the subject matter jurisdiction of this commission? But secondly, if the city council wants to consider collectives, I would maybe throw something out there with regards to if there's going to be an ordinance that does not violate any law, whether it's federal, state, or local.
You know, we started this whole discussion several months ago, and it's an incredible process because we've had an opportunity to completely become educated on the various issues. But remember when we started this thing, with this whole discussion and analysis of this issue, Captain Anderson said rather well that law enforcement just doesn't have any, we need direction. We need to know which way to go. And we've kind of been, or I don't know whether the commission has or all of us have, I feel kind of like we've been kicking the can down the road on this thing for a while because it's one of these kinds of issues that is really difficult to resolve. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to give the direction that Captain Anderson was looking for. And part of it is, on the one hand, I came from a career in law enforcement. That's what I did for a lot of years. And because of that, we, as a law enforcement agency, you enforce the laws, whatever they are. You know what? I'll guarantee you that any police officer that's done it for any period of time have enforced laws that they personally didn't believe in. You know, we don't really believe in this, but you know what? This is the law. We have to do it. The classic example was when the speed limit was reduced from, 65 to 55, and everybody thought, golly, this is kind of crazy. But the truth of the matter is we did it. And that's part of the dilemma that law enforcement has today is that even though we have, and it's been complicated a little bit on this issue because the state has, through either through Senate Bill 420 or Prop 215, is it 215 or 217? 215. Legalized marijuana under certain circumstances, but it puts it in contrast and conflict with existing federal law. I think we've heard from a number of different sources. We know that if put to the test, that the federal law is going to preempt California state law. So that creates a problem for us. It does create a problem. You have, a preemption. But on the other hand, we have the Attorney General now, as Mr. Hunt eloquently pointed out, the law hasn't changed, the federal law hasn't changed. They have just elected not to enforce that part of the law. So we're still in this kind of a limbo situation where California law allows certain activities, federal law precludes those activities, and here we are in the middle trying to understand how we're going to react to this. And our charge as a commission was to reduce, the mayor, when he appointed this commission, charged the commission with reducing Part 1 crimes in Lancaster. That was the rule. That's what he wanted done. And so the challenge for us is to determine whether or not each of these two concepts, the dispensary or the collectives, will accomplish that goal. And we heard Commissioner Vieira talk about a little bit of what he was experiencing with on the one hand, being charged with reducing crimes and potentially making a recommendation that is in conflict with the federal law. So it's not as simple as we would like it to be. And that being said, I don't know that I've explained anything, but just maybe an explanation why it appears that we're kicking that can down the road, because I think we are.
Though I do think it appears that we're ready to take action on that first recommendation that came forward. Second one, maybe deserves more discussion, but...
The only person I haven't heard from, and when we had the subcommittee with Vice Chairman Christ and Commissioner Brown, I believe the city attorney was going to be part of that. Is that correct? I haven't heard from the city attorney on the issues, the legal issues that relate to the establishment of either dispensaries and or collectives.
Well, that was one of my questions I had. We started into that the last time. I believe Mr. McEwen was absent at the last meeting as well.
Right.
But when the committee was formed, I know that Marv and Vice Chairman Christ and Dr. Brown were going to meet with the city attorney and review other municipalities, their ordinances they had in place, and look for some that worked and some provisions that maybe did not work. In fact, I think one of his comments was, in the event the city ended up preparing an ordinance, if that happened at a city council level, that maybe the ordinance that would be drafted in this city would be one that would be looked at by other cities as a model. I haven't seen any of the ordinance from other municipalities like Oakland and some of the other cities that have approved those. And I would love to do that. As far as the issues today, I'm hearing the recommendations and the comments by Vice Chairman Chris and by Dr. Brown. I'd rather see these issues bifurcated, because really it seems like the thrust of the discussion and the way it's been agendized has been about dispensaries rather than trying to get off into the area of the collectives right now. Clearly that's something that the city has the ability to regulate, and in the event the collectives are here and they're going to stay, I certainly would think the city would want to play a significant role in deciding where those things would operate from, under what conditions and what hours and what type of zoning and all of the other items that other members on this commission have discussed. But I've been under the impression we were going to deal really with the dispensary issue now rather than the collectives. And I share the concerns that some of the other commission members have, that there is existing federal law that appears to be in conflict with state law. And it seems like an incredible nuance that California decriminalized marijuana under certain specific instances for medicinal purposes. Rather than it being legalized, it's decriminalized. And I assume there's some difference which I still can't quite get a grasp on, but I believe it is decriminalized. It was done by the voters, and it was done in 1996, and it's still there. So we're going to have to deal with what that allows as far as collectives are concerned, but that should be an issue for another day. I understand they're closely related with these dispensaries, the concept is, but in these public meetings we've talked primarily about dispensaries and what kind of position the commission has after reviewing that information about dispensaries, and how we want to send a message back to the city council with our findings. I'm just more focused on the dispensaries right now.
If I could, I think we're all in agreement that the dispensaries is not something we would recommend, that we should have a recommendation to the city council that we recommend against the establishment of medical marijuana dispensaries in the city of Lancaster. I think that's pretty simple, and I think everybody's in agreement with that.
Is that a motion?
Let's make it a motion that the Criminal Justice Commission recommends against the establishment of medical marijuana dispensaries in the city of Lancaster.
I'll second that.
Okay. Take a vote.
The vote is unanimous.
Secondly, though, I tend to agree Commissioner Augusta that we've been kicking this around for a long time. The fact that that there's a conflict in the federal law and the state law, I don't think is we're not going to solve that at the Criminal Justice Commission. And I think that at this point, I would be happy to be shed of this issue. There is a law currently in California. Part of the problem, and I heard it from the nice woman, I didn't get her name, but who talked about their function of the dispensary here in town, as well as the nice woman from Inglewood. Part of the problem is that people are operating in a state of ambiguity. The rules aren't very clear. There appears to be a law on the books that allows people to come together in a cooperative or to share medical marijuana. All I would suggest, and I'd suggest this from the beginning, is that these cooperatives do exist, and they will continue to exist, and they will sprout up in new and different forms. And what I would recommend to the City Council is that they draft regulations that would apply to these cooperatives within the City of Lancaster. If they do not, then there will just continue to be this ongoing ambivalence. We're not going to draft these regulations, and as I suggested earlier, they should probably be drafted by the land use and what would be the department, Mr. Caudell?
It'd be the planning department and then going through the planning commission, but the city attorney would typically draft that ordinance.
And I would suggest that we recommend to the city council that they have somebody draft an ordinance, and our only recommendation was that they would be mindful of the potential for criminal behavior and abuse.
Is that a motion?
So let's try that. Let's make a recommendation that the Criminal Justice Commission would recommend that the City Council write an ordinance to speak to the issue of medical marijuana cooperatives, and that they attend to the issue of the potential for criminal behavior and abuse.
Let me see if I can. Let me just narrow that down.
Phrase that a little more effectively. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
I will read from what we've already kind of drafted. The Criminal Justice Commission recommends to the City of to the Lancaster City Council that cooperatives be regulated with very specific guidelines that reduce the opportunity for criminal behavior.
And if that's a motion, I would second it.
The comment is cooperatives and collectives. I believe that.
Maybe we need
and that's a fair comment. I'm using that word interchangeably, as I think it is used interchangeably in the Senate bill and the Attorney General's opinion piece.
They're both mentioned. I think that's what you're concerned about.
Fine.
Well, it would be important to know if there's a distinction between a cooperative and a collective.
I think it's also important not to have a discussion with the.
Are you saying there is or there is not?
Yes, I said there is. There is a difference.
I think they're both aren't they both contemplated under 215 and 420? No. They're both.
Get control.
Yeah. I'm not so sure that we're ready to rule on a motion without really understanding the difference, if there is a difference between the two, how they apply under Senate Bill 420, and perhaps we're going to need to hear from the city attorney on that issue. I'm not really prepared to vote on a motion if I don't understand the language of.
Can I make a suggestion that we figure out a motion that we're all comfortable with, so that we can move? I think we've beaten this issue to death in the Criminal Justice Commission, and really, quite honestly, there's some other issues that we need to move forward on. I think that you could even incorporate that into a motion that the City Council investigate the possibility of adopting an ordinance that would regulate cooperatives and collectives as they are allowed under state law. I think we could say it generally enough that the City Council will get the gist of that. I think what we're saying is is that whether you want to define it as a collective or a cooperative, I know there's some debate about that, that we do need some regulation, that we already heard today that this is happening in our city. And so I appreciate just this, if we could stop the comments there. Everybody's had an opportunity to share. It's just not orderly to start to have discussions back and forth. That could we come up with something here that would be general enough that we could all feel good about? We could even incorporate in that some kind of a comment that, with an understanding that federal law still prohibits the use of medical marijuana while the state law allows it. That should be a part of what the city council would address as well. And so I would just like to see us come up with some kind of a motion here so that we are not back here the next meeting discussing this again, so the next meeting we can vote on what we discussed again. I think we have beaten this to death. And so I would suggest some kind of a motion.
If I can make a comment real quick, first of all. I'm willing, absolutely, but I don't know if it's been mentioned or if it has, maybe I forgot. But again, under the Controlled Substance Act, when I read that, it's my understanding that that is an avenue, that is a manner by which a drug can become prescribable. Now, at this point in time, again, marijuana is not, but that may be something that really needs to be addressed there. Has nothing to do with us, but there at the federal level. And if it becomes a prescribable drug, then a doctor can prescribe it, and an individual can go through a pharmacy and have that done. So I want to make that comment, let it out there, because I don't know if that's really been brought to the surface.
Let me read. I appreciate what you're saying. This is from another city ordinance from, looks like it's Healdsburg. It's up north. And it says, whereas SB 420 permits qualified patients and their primary caregivers to collectively or cooperatively cultivate marijuana for medical purposes, it does not, however, address the role of dispensaries, and so that's what we're doing here. So I think the point is the collective cooperative. My understanding, honestly, of reading tons of material is that those are synonymous terms, that those are used, collective or cooperative. I think the point that I would like to make is that we should come up with some kind of a recommendation, if nothing else, that the city council investigate the presence of collectives and cooperatives in the city, and that they seek to regulate them to reduce the possibility of abuse and possible criminal behavior, something to that effect. I mean, we've already heard today that they exist here in the city.
Can we add to that motion, the Criminal Justice Commission does acknowledge that we recognize it's against federal law?
I think you can.
So that
I think you could say we could recognize that there's a disparity between federal and state law.
Can you make a motion?
I'm trying to say all this so somebody else can make this motion.
I think what we're struggling with here is I mean, we're almost there. I think what we're struggling with is we had it until it became convoluted and complicated by the word collective. So I don't know why we can't just use the language that we had before, that the Criminal Justice Commission recommends to the Lancaster City Council, that marijuana cooperatives and or collectives be regulated with very specific guidelines that reduce opportunity for criminal behavior.
Is that a motion?
I think Dr. Vieira can speak to that.
If I can make a point also, is that I don't want to limit the council's consideration that maybe they don't want an ordinance that would do that. Maybe they want an ordinance that would say we don't want an issue that's in violation with federal law. That's just a point being made. I would not want to restrict and direct what they may or may not do. They can have all those options, whether it's to ban, whether it's to guide. Let's not restrict whatever they choose to do on those lines.
Maybe I misunderstand it, but to me, I'm only envisioning this as a recommendation.
That's all it is.
And so that they can broaden the scope of what we're sending to them, certainly, if there's any other issues. The fact, the last reading that Chairman Augusta had involved both cooperatives and collectives. And I'm interpreting it still as just a recommendation from this commission. And so I would assume that the council would be able to act on it in a fuller, broader sense.
I think there may be some wisdom, though. I hear Dr. Vieira keeps coming back to that same point, which I understand. It's against federal law.
And I agree with Commissioner Greer on that. I think we're sort of overthinking this. Basically, all we're saying is you guys can choose or not choose to deal with this confusion in the law and what's happening in your city. From our point of view, be mindful of the potential criminal consequences. Not sure we're saying much more than that. And I think that's sort of what Commissioner Augusta's phrase says. I don't think it's our business to be dealing with all this other stuff. Let's tell them that we're worried about crime. That's our job, to be worried about crime, and move on.
Can I make one recommendation to you? Is that one of your members, and probably one of them that was on the committee, should be involved with city staff when they do work on the regulations to this. And I think this committee is uniquely qualified, after hearing 3 days of public debate, studying this issue in depth, to have one of your members directly involved in the process if the city council decides to go forward with an ordinance to regulate the cooperatives and collectives. And I think also the city council is looking for your wisdom and what the next step is for the city council, so they don't have to relive the 3 meetings you've had.
That's, I think, the point.
Yeah. We really need to get this put into the form of a motion that we can agree on, and then get a vote on it and get it moved to the city council.
I'm going to take a shot at it. A motion. You guys can come up with a different one if you think it possible. While self-contained medical marijuana cooperatives are clearly allowed under state law and prohibited under federal law, so we're stating the problem there, the Criminal Justice Commission recommends that if the City of Lancaster chooses to allow collectives and or cooperatives, that they be regulated with very specific guidelines that reduce the opportunity for abuse and criminal behavior.
Is that a motion?
I make that a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay.
The motion is passed.
Thank you.
There may be a third recommendation, as Mr. Paris mentioned, the recommendation of the council that they appoint or you appoint somebody to participate with city staff in the eventuality that there is a drafting of an ordinance, because there will be a number of different scenarios that go through, one with the planning issues, one with code enforcement, and still another with the criminal actions associated with the issue. So it'd be appropriate to recommend to appoint one of you to participate with city staff in there.
Do we need that in the form of a motion? I mean, the city council, has the ability to do that without a recommendation from us.
They have the ability to do anything without a recommendation from you, but it may be a good sentiment to them that you wish to continue being part of the process.
How about either Dr. Brown or myself, who's ever available?
Could we just make a motion that it can be more than one? Could we not have it be the committee, Dr. Brown and Vice Chairman Christ?
That'd be great.
You want to make that motion?
I would motion that Dr. Brown and Vice Chair Marvin Christ be a part of that committee to follow up.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Unanimous vote.
Okay, let's very quickly move on to our commission reports. I call upon Jim Cobalt, and Mark's not here, for an update on our crime statistics report.
Thank you, Chairman. I have maps in front of you that contain the crime information from the last 3 weeks since you met. You can see weeks 30, 31, and 32 of 29 are contained in it. The violent crime rate and property crime rate and total Part 1 crimes in week 30. Total Part 1 crimes were 98. Total Part 1 crimes in week 31 were 80. And total Part 1 crimes for week 32 were 93. Again, it's important for you to understand these are rough estimates. These are These are incidences. They appear in the data right now, and they are subject to change upon the cleansing of the data for the Uniform Crime Report. Unique uniform uniform report numbers issued: 570 for week 30, 550 for week 31, and 562 for week 32. Looking back at these 3 weeks, one interesting thing stood out to me as I took a look at the data, and that was that the reporting districts that were involved were present in all 3 of the weeks that were measured. 1121, 1135, and 1137 appeared in all 3 of the weeks, which is kind of interesting. That really hasn't happened since we've been making this report to you. There have been some that have been present, but there's usually some kind of changing around. During this time period, they were pretty consistent. If you take a look at your maps to go along with that, I'll pull up the map here on the screen. Some interesting things can be seen as you take a look at, and this is for the 3-week time period. 1121 seemed to have a little different crime characteristics than the other 2 districts, or the other 2 reporting districts. 1121 crime seemed to focus more heavily on vehicle theft and robberies, while there were a few burglaries mixed in with it and a few larcenies. When we go over to the east side of town to 1135, we can see a much higher prevalence of larcenies and burglaries, and the same thing pretty much applies with 1137. As you take a look at that, and this kind of suggests to us that the strategies that we may want to employ on the east side of town may be a little bit different than the strategies that we want to employ in 1121, since the crimes and those characteristics are a little bit different from each other. And basically, that's what we bring to your attention. Questions?
Captain Anderson, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, that I really like the program that Jim's put together here. In reality, there isn't a whole bunch on this map that our Detective Bureau personnel don't already pretty much know about. But the really neat thing is, by going through this process and actually seeing this map and discussing things, it gives us an opportunity to, I think, put our heads together, develop strategies, and really kind of get a picture view to help us become more aware of how we need to disperse our resources to take care of this program. So I think this is a real positive thing, and I think it's going to help us as we learn to better utilize it.
Mm-hmm.
Any more comments? Thank you very much. Commission report number 2, report on the Neighborhood Impact Program. I call upon Commissioner Johnson for that.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to give you an update on Neighborhood Impact. I think last time I had mentioned that there was going to be a city barbecue out in the Paiute area, and that date was moved to August 29th. So you might want to just mark your calendars there, and I'm sure if you have any questions on that, you could call the city staff and they could fill you in on that, or you could call us over at Grace Chapel and we could give you more details. If you'd like to be there, we'd love to have you. A few of the things we've done this month is we took the young people from the neighborhood over to Grace Resource Center, and they actually served hot meals to homeless people coming through for food, and just had great reports back on that. And then also involved some of the young people in just some front yard cleanup in a neighborhood community house. We took a group of students to Zuma Beach, which apparently was well received. And then we also took 9 kids to summer camp. We have people that will sponsor children to go to summer camp, so we were able to do that as well. And then we have, for example, a couple of Jet Hawk games set up on the 14th of August and the 21st. For some reason, I think it's just because of space, but we have one of the boxes up there that somebody's donated. We're taking the boys on the 14th and the girls on the 21st, which maybe that's just a really smart idea anyhow, so I don't know. But anyhow, that's going really well. We're excited. As we move into the fall, we'll resume tutoring and some of the after-school activities. The afternoon drop-in center currently is meeting, but that always picks up in popularity after when school resumes. So things are going well with Neighborhood Impact.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Public business from the floor, non-agendized items.
We have no public speakers for non-agendized items.
Okay. Final comments. I want to thank each of these commission members for all of the hard work they did on trying to understand and analyze this whole issue about medical marijuana. Everybody has worked so hard, and Vice Chairman Chris, a special thanks to him, and Commissioner Brown for the hard work that they did. Just a lot of effort, energy. This whole process seems to be working very well, because I think each of us know much more about and are much more educated about the issue than we were before. So I just want to thank each of you for a great job. The next regular meeting of the Criminal Justice Commission will be Wednesday, September 9th, 2009, and we stand adjourned until then.